So once again, thank you for coming. This piece of work is something that Raleigh was passionate about getting done because we have been working on the ICSE program that DFID has funded, International Citizen Service. That's a consortium delivered and led by VSO that allows us to explore more beyond employability for young people and into the actual creation of businesses. So I'll just talk to you a little bit about Raleigh itself at the moment. So Raleigh is basically, we exist to create lasting change through youth. That's our passion. We work with and through young people and believe that working with and through young people gives more of the solutions for the future that are sustainable, long-term and lasting. We help communities and young people around the world to create lasting change together. So it's very much a program that brings both the community side and the young people together to make change happen. Our approach delivers sustainable development at a grassroots level, bringing transformational change to youth in rural communities while protecting vulnerable environments. So we're really looking and interested in working at the intersection between social change, environmental management, and economic development. So only that way, excuse me, will interventions be sustainable. Rachel, can I just borrow the water? Thanks. So for us, why young people? We recognize that young people are actually going to be the people who are both creating now and will be creating the future, the change that's needed. So we recognize that they are often disempowered or unempowered, and that it's only by working and facilitating and supporting them can their voice be heard, but also can their talents and creativity and spirit be harnessed to achieve change. The issue around youth unemployment is not one that will be unfamiliar to anyone in the audience. Over half the population in the world at the moment is under 25, and in most of the countries we work, somewhere between a half and two-thirds of those people are either unemployed or underemployed. And it's very well recognized by the UN, the World Bank and others that top-down solutions will not work. It's going to be exceptionally difficult to create enough jobs through governments and through large corporations that will create opportunities that will give young people the chance they deserve and the real buy-in to their local economies. So we've got to work bottom-up. We've got to work top-down and bottom-up. Only that way will we create enough opportunity within the economy to make change happen and to really have young people bought into their societies and their communities. And that's really important. It's really important for development. It's really important for long-term sustainability. If young people don't have that sense of buy-in to the future and that sense of engagement in creating solutions to development in the countries they're working in, then the country is going to have more problems rather than less. So ICS Entrepreneur as a program for Raleigh, I think all the consortium members do it slightly differently, but Raleigh's program takes aspiring entrepreneurs, so identifies those young people in communities who are interested in starting a business, and it works alongside them, puts in teams of volunteers, a mixture of UK and in-country volunteers on a 1-to-1 ratio for a period of up to 6 months to work with them, support them, and give them the kinds of training and development they need. The local project partners, we've been out to tender in both countries, in Nicaragua and Tanzania, found local project partners who had the kinds of expertise that we felt that were complementary to our own. So for example, in Nicaragua, we worked with a partner who had a lot of experience of training and developing entrepreneurs, but didn't really know how to work with and through youth. So we would support them to help them engage and make the kind of curriculum and materials appropriate and the approach appropriate to working with the youth audience. So there is a small seed corn funding that's made available so that young entrepreneurs, it's not a barrier, the finance, to being able to start their business. And the kind of activities will include peer-to-peer mentoring and training, needs assessment and market analysis. So simple things. We're working primarily with volunteers and young people in rural communities, not in urban communities. So we recognize that a broad range of activities need to be available to them. And so helping young people in the community recognize what is a business opportunity. You know, where is there in this village, this community, a place where they could create some sort of value that people would want to pay for. because ultimately that is at the heart of the sustainability of the initiative, is that young people have something they can sell and that there are people in the community who will pay for it. And that's fine. We need to recognize that and build that into the program. So those mentors who work with the community volunteers and community entrepreneurs longer term create all sorts of different opportunities. And some of them will be doing business training. Some may be just doing confidence building and support, because the soft skills, that sense of belief, is really important. You know, young people have to believe that it's possible for them to start a business, and the community around them has to take them seriously. And you need to work on both sides of that in order to make that work. We did the pilot slightly differently in both countries. In Nicaragua, we worked with a couple of partners who were embedded in the communities to create a range of opportunities. In Tanzania, we worked with a large international NGO that was focusing on the agricultural dairy value chain. And they were struggling with engagement of youth, and it was a problem for the delivery of their program. So we worked with them to identify, okay, how do we create a methodology that will engage local young people to think about the opportunities that entrepreneurs and businesses might create, one that will keep them engaged in the agricultural sector, and also that will give them and the local farmers viability longer term. So with ODI, we basically wanted ODI to spend some time in each country to really look at what had worked well, what hadn't worked well, because we want to embed this program longer term into the International Citizen Service programming. And for us, we have a long track record in creating employability outcomes. The entrepreneurship we'd created in a different way out of some of our programs, but we didn't have a consistent methodology for applying that. And so we were looking at what is it that we could learn, what is it that we could actually start to apply more consistently, and also what are the differences between the different countries we're working in, Tanzania and Nicaragua. We're obviously also interested in contributing to the sector knowledge around entrepreneurship. It's a very important area for us. It's a very important part of ODI's work, and working with Claudia has been a real pleasure. She's quite a specialist in this area, which has been great. So that's it from me. Just to remember again, we do have an online audience, and that hashtag Youth Entrepreneurship, and thank everyone for joining. I'll just quickly introduce the video. There's a short video on an entrepreneur in Tanzania to give a little flavor for how the program's been running. And it's Yona is the entrepreneur, and he's in southern Tanzania in a place called Mbula. So thank you very much, and hopefully we can carry on the conversation after the event itself, outside and ongoing. Thank you.
Naitwa Yona Freestore, na miaka 19, natoka kijiji cha Mbula, kitongoji cha Igembe. Matatizo yanayokumba jamii yangu kiujumla ni ukosefu wa ajira, maji na elimu kuhusu ufugaji. Fursa zilizopo hapa kwenye kijiji changu kiujumla ndo kama hivi, mtu kujiajiri mwenyewe, yani unafanya biashara ambayo inaweza kukuingizia kipato. Kama mimi nafanya biashara ya uuzaji wa kitimoto. Sasa naona ni bora nikafanya biashara nyingine ambayo ndo maana nimeingia kwenye mafunzo ya ujasiriamali ili niweze kufanya kazi ambayo inaweza kuniingizia kipato vizuri. Wazo wangu la biashara ndo kama hivyo, uuzaji wa chakula cha mifugo, na nimeamua kufanya hivi kwa sababu gani? Hapa kwenye kijiji chetu hamna biashara kama hii. Kwa hiyo watu wanafuata vyakula mbali vya mifugo. Kwa ndo maana nimeamua nianzishe hii biashara. Itakuja kusaidia sana katika kijiji. Mimi nilichojifunza kikubwa sana ni kwamba nitabadilika kutokana na mazingira. Make nikiona sehemu nipo labda nafanya biashara haiendi, kwa nitajitahidi kubadilika ili kufuata sehemu ambayo ina soko zuri, wateja wanapata kwa wingi. Kizuri zaidi ndo kama hivyo, wametupa elimu, wametuelimisha jinsi gani tufanye biashara. Na ukikutana na changamoto hiyo unatakiwa ufanyeje, ufanye vipi ili kuweza kulitatua hilo tatizo.
Mimi ninavyoona matumaini kwa kile ambacho watakuwa wamekifundisha hiki wanakofundisha, baadaye kinaweza kitakuja kutuletea mabadiliko makubwa, kwa sababu hiki ni kitu cha milele, cha kudumu. Kile walichokifundisha najua ni kitasaidia kizazi na kizazi,
The thing that I learned from the program, first of one is public speaking, because we always like trying to stand in front of them, explaining what we try to say to them to make them understand. Also, my English is improving.
My experience on ICS has contributed to my future in a big way. Before I came here, I had a plan to sort of start working corporate life, but being here has sort of opened my eyes to international development, to other people, to sort of what can I do to help other people rather than me.
I dreamed to be a young man who will help my fellow Africans.
We have a little feedback box from the entrepreneurs each session, and seeing them say from I don't understand to I understand, I really enjoyed your session, is something which I really find that I'm doing something useful.
Kikubwa nilichojifunza mimi kutoka kwa hawa vijana wa Raleigh, kwanza wamenifungua ni jinsi gani utafanya biashara yako, jinsi gani utabadilika kutokana na mazingira. Vitu kama hivyo na elimu kiujumla ya biashara hapa.
Nifurahi kwa sababu wanapenda kujifunza na wanapenda kutufundisha vitu ambavyo wenyewe ni vya kwao na wenyewe wanapenda tuwafundishe vitu ambavyo tunavijua hapa.
Nimefurahishwa na nimependezwa kwa sababu hawa vijana ni vijana wadogo sana, lakini wamenikomboa pakubwa katika mambo ya uelimishaji vijana namna kujitegemea.
Biashara yangu nitaianza kwa kufanya, kwanza nitawapa elimu wanajamii kwamba ufugaji unatakiwa uwe na kidogo mifugo yako inakula vizuri, ndio kama hivi nitaleta vyakula vya mifugo. Nitawapa elimu. Kitakachonisaidia zaidi mpaka biashara yangu kukua kuwa na wateja wengi itakuwa ni huduma nzuri. Huduma itafuatana na vitu ninavyovileta. Kwa mfano kama nitakuwa nauza chakula cha mifugo, na maana kutakuwa na pumba, mashudu na hasa ni hivyo viwili tu. Na sasa kama ndio hivyo nitakiwa niwe na huduma nzuri, inamaanisha kwamba niwe na hudumia vizuri wateja wangu, niwe na bei nzuri ambayo mtu hata ukimwambia mtu anakuelewa na kweli hii bei ni halali. Sawa. Mimi ushauri wangu kwa vijana wanaotaka kujiunga na ile ujasiriamali, ile mafunzo ya ujasiriamali, ni kwamba kwanza waje kwenye mafunzo. Wakishapata mafunzo, hiyo itawasaidia hata wao wenyewe jinsi gani wafanye katika kuinua kipato chao wenyewe. Matumaini yangu ya mbeleni ni kwamba nikija kuwa na wateja wengi, biashara yangu ikaenda vizuri, nataka niwe mfanya biashara mkubwa.
Journalist habit of noting down quotes. My name's Oliver Bouch. Just to reiterate Stacey's opening remarks about what a pleasure it is to have such a great audience here, such a great panel, and also this online audience. We're very excited about the opportunity to interrogate some of the recommendations and findings in this excellent report that's being published today. At the section for The Guardian that I write on sustainable business, youth entrepreneurship is very much on our radar. It's an issue that we cover. We try and cover very regularly for all the reasons that are laid out in the introduction of the report. Those 600 million jobs that need to be found for young people over the next 10 years, as the World Bank finds, just to keep things stable and at a level that is not particularly terrific if we look at those. That terrible word NEET, not in employment, educational training, 12.6% globally, but much higher in some of the countries, particularly the countries that Raleigh work in and ODI are concerned with. So very much on our agenda, but we tend to look at this through the prism of the large corporations, so it's a Barclays or Anglo or O2, those are the kind of people when we're thinking about entrepreneurship. So for me, it was a real eye-opener to see what's going on, this bottom-up nature that Stacey talked about that's happening actually really at the grassroots. Anglo put lots of money into this, but actually to see the very, very important local dynamics and relationships that are being built up through programs like the one we're discussing today was very illuminating for me, and I look forward to learning more about it from your insights. So it's my job to introduce the panel. We're very fortunate to have a sort of range of different of views on the table and expertise on the table today. Then we'll open it up. We're going to have a few short presentations, opening remarks, have a chat around the table, and then we're very keen to involve the audience. I'm sure some of you will come along with specific or general questions, and also to our online audience who I'm listening to you wherever you might be on the iPad here. So Claudia Pompa is a you can read the blurb on here basically, but 10 years experience in development world. Used to work for the ODI in their private sector and markets team as a researcher, and is the lady that has put together this report. Tim at the other end there is suffering from a bit of a cold. That's why we shunted him down to the end. Sorry about that, Claudia. But some of you might know him from the telly, as they say. So he was on The Apprentice. Winner had the. Was it a pleasure to work to get? Is it a booby prize to go and work for Lord Sugar?
No comment. Let's focus on young people.
Okay, young people. But has a range of experience now in identifying and promoting young talent, both for corporates but also through charity, Bright Ideas, and another charity I think you're going to mention. Is our business head, and Dennis Pavon. Is our man on the ground who really understands what it is to engage and train up young people to participate in their communities and deliver social value through business, through his work with Raleigh previously, and now with ICS Entrepreneurs in Nicaragua. And I think probably we had a lovely introduction, a feel for the kind of projects that we're talking about from that video. But I thought it was to kick off, we're going to ask. I was going to say we're going to ask Dennis to give us a practical example. But for that, Claudia is going to take us through her findings, aren't you?
Yes.
So I'll hand on to Claudia. So for 5-10 minutes,
okay,
let's hear the headlines.
Okay, so let's get this ready. Thank you, Oliver, and thanks everyone for being here. I was one of the lead researchers for this piece, and now I want to walk you through the research and how it was conducted and some of the key findings and takeaways that we have. But first, I want to set the tone, and much of what is on this slide has been discussed already, but I just want to ground it a little bit more, because when we talk about 600 million new jobs that need to be created over the next decade, we're talking about 5 million new jobs per month, 1 million of which they have to be in Africa. Just think about the scale of the problem. And when we talk about young unemployed people, we are talking about, as of 2015, 73.3 million young people unemployed, 621 million nets. So we really need to think about scalable solutions that could be replicated across contexts and that could be taken to scale. So with that, I'm going to take you a little bit through the research. So as Stacey already presented, we looked at emerging findings from the ICSE program in Tanzania and Nicaragua. And we looked at gathering information about employability skills and prospects for entrepreneurs, national or in-country volunteers and team leaders, and community participants. The research had 3 main parts. We did a desk research to find out what were the latest evidence in terms of youth entrepreneurship. We conducted the field research in Nicaragua and Tanzania, where we did focus group discussions and key informant interviews. And we talked to entrepreneurs, in-country volunteers, team leaders, employers, community leaders, parents, project partners, local government officials, and everyone who might have a view about the program. And we also conducted a quantitative analysis of the knowledge, attitudes, and practice survey, which focused on the experiences of the in-country volunteers. And we address a few of the questions that you see on the screen around perceptions of employability, program experiences, the role and benefits to the parents and community, perceptions of employability for the in-country volunteers, and we've also identified some areas of future inquiry where we need to build up the evidence. And I'm going to walk you through some of the key research findings, and a lot of them are very rich, so we urge you to read the report. And I'm putting a lot on the screen, but I'm going to walk you through some of the main ones. So first of all, in terms of youth employability and the value of skills learned, we found that this wraparound services approach was extremely helpful in terms of delivering results in a very short time. And what we mean by wraparound services is that you cannot only deliver training, but you need to deliver a holistic approach,
or support to the training that you are providing in terms of mentoring, access to finance, networking, access to networks, and so on. So wraparound services are understood as the aspects of the program that complement the main content and curricula. And particularly, the World Bank has been focusing on this and trying to understand how the wraparound services work. And the emerging findings seems to tell us that programs that do use this approach tend to have better outcomes. And I like to use my famous analogy of baking a cake. When you bake a cake, you need ingredients. You need flour and sugar, eggs and butter. And we know that those are the very minimum ingredients that we need to have a cake. And in youth entrepreneurship, we are starting to get there in terms of the evidence of what are some of the key ingredients that we need in order to bake the cake. So we now are getting the evidence not only from this report but from the sector that a good entrepreneurship program is one that combines training in skills, in a very diverse set of skills, but also provides access to finance, provides mentoring, and provides access to networks. What we don't know yet is the exact measurement of the ingredients. So when you have a cake and you have a recipe, it tells you 3 eggs, 2 cups of flour, and so much of butter. In youth entrepreneurship, we know the ingredients, we don't know the measurement of the ingredients. So some organizations end up with amazing cakes, and others use the same ingredients and the cake is not so good. So what we are trying to do here, or what we are trying to say is that we need to, now that we know some of the ingredients that work, the sector needs to move this conversation further, trying to understand what is the right measurement for the ingredients. Training, how much training? Training in what? Mentorship, how much mentorship? What type of mentorship? How do we structure mentorship? Access to finance, what type of services and products? To whom at what stage? Those are some of the questions that we're hinted in. And I think one of the very interesting things is that although we can say that, wraparound services work, what we cannot say specifically is what within wraparound services worked and how did it work. So this is something we need to explore further. We are seeing that, that in ICSC, kids are starting to have businesses, that businesses are helping in terms of self-employment. They are already earning money, those who started, and they are using that money, which is separate from family income or wages, to either reinvest in their businesses or further their studies, which is very important because without this, they wouldn't be able to continue their studies, or to support and help their family income. So, very important things there. When we talk to a lot of entrepreneurs with businesses, they were saying, I use the money from my business to continue my education. And now my education is more meaningful because what I am learning, I can use it back again on my businesses. So creating these cycles again. And all of them reported important gains in business, technical, and life skills. And we divided these because they're very different. In terms of life skills, gains in confidence and self-esteem. In terms of business skills, the ones that were valued the most were obviously doing a business plan, learning how to do a marketing strategy, business branding, and learning how to use and invest your profits and earnings. And we also address the issue of technical skills because youth entrepreneurship programs usually tend to focus on lives and business skills. But actually, technical knowledge is also very important in terms of what type of businesses young people decide to run. And we found out that depending on the level of the technical knowledge, young people decided to do one business or the other. They had very clear ideas about the businesses they wanted to run, but not only had the skills to run those, and therefore their ideas change over time. And so this issue of technical knowledge and technical skills cannot be underestimated when we're running youth entrepreneurship programs. So those are some of the entrepreneurs. In terms of program experiences, I think there's a lot of richness here. Contextualization and customization was very important. And by this we mean a core curricula that volunteers had complete freedom to deliver in the most meaningful way or the way that work the best for their local communities. And I think this is very important because usually when you develop curricula, you had a very fixed idea on how the curricula or the content should be delivered. And you tend to forget about context, and context does matter. So young entrepreneurs were, the young volunteers were able to tweak and adapt the content as much as possible, making it very relevant to the young entrepreneurs they work with. Mentorship skills were identified across the border as very relevant, and ICSC provides different types of mentors. They have business mentors, technical mentors, community mentors, and they're starting to play with the idea of peer-to-peer mentors, which is also a very strong and powerful idea. And we still need to understand more, how do we set up peer-to-peer mentorship? How do we make them relevant and useful? And especially, how do we make sure that we create groups where young people can exchange their challenges about starting a business? There was the issue about access to finance, and one of the very interesting things with ICSC is that the core of the programs were the same, but certain aspects change in different countries. So in Nicaragua, they chose one approach, and in Tanzania, another. And in access to finance in Nicaragua, they provided seed capital in terms of in-kind grant. And in Nicaragua, the young entrepreneurs are receiving loans that are guaranteed by Raleigh. And what we found is that those people that got the seed capital in Nicaragua were able to start their businesses. It was a competition. Those who didn't get the funding were having a harder time to start, not surprisingly, but it just means that, this starting seed capital is very important for young entrepreneurs to start their operations. The loans in Tanzania were slightly more complicated, and I think there are some questions there, rather than just findings, more questions about, how do you set up loans for young entrepreneurs, and questions about, very real questions about what happens if a young entrepreneur defaults, and even if the loan is already guaranteed, what are the messages that you're sending across? How will that affect credit history over time? But maybe most importantly for me is, are loans ever the best option for first-time rural entrepreneurs? And that's something we don't know yet, and there has to be more evidence there to answer that question. And then the sectoral focus, as you already heard from Stacy, in Nicaragua, anyone can start a business in any sector, provided that you create your business plan and find a community need and show the feasibility of your business. And in Tanzania, it was linked to the dairy sector. In Nicaragua, there were not major issues, but in Tanzania, people wanted to broaden this sector. So although in paper makes a lot of sense to train young people and ask them to be part of the dairy value chain, where there are already very specific opportunities, they are asking for more. They want to do that, but they also want to do a lot of other things. They want to do M-Pesa businesses, and so mobile transactions, and they want to open their little grocery shops, and they want to do motorbike services. So young people are very ambitious and want to have multiple streams of income. And this speaks to also ongoing research in the area and this idea of mixed livelihoods, which is young people are not doing one thing. They're doing multiple things, and the research says that some are doing 5 to 9 different things. Others are doing as many as 20 or 30 different things. So we need to understand what are the things that they're doing and how do we support them, and what is the role that agriculture/dairy production plays within this mix, and how do we support that. And I think this is something that, particularly Raleigh is well posed to keep exploring, because they're already working with these young people. They already have the networks in place and try to gather data over time to understand some of these questions. Then I think just very broadly in terms of parents and family support, what we found is that the family is the make it or break it deal for rural entrepreneurs. When we talk about entrepreneurial ecosystems in urban areas, we tend to focus on access to finance, regulatory environment, support from the government, and so on and so forth. But the literature doesn't necessarily support the role of families. And when you go to the rural areas, that is the one support network they have. If they don't have family engagement, it's going to be extremely hard for them to succeed in their businesses. And we need to understand how to engage families and at what level do we engage them and how do we engage them in this process. And we are already seeing a lot of spillovers from the program, young entrepreneurs who receive training their parents helping them, employing people and so on. So this is definitely an area that needs to be explore further. In terms of the value of the program for employability for the young volunteers, most of them, in-country volunteers, said they joined the program because it was a very practical first work experience. So basically, after this, they can go to have interviews with employers, and employers ask them, have you ever had a situation that you have to work under pressure? And they have an answer. Can you tell us about a time when you were a leader, and they have an answer? Do you have actual working experience? They have an answer, and they have the skills to prove it. But for me, what was very surprising is that now many of them are starting to think about becoming entrepreneurs, which I don't know to what extent that was thought about in the program, but now all these young people who received the training and train others said, well, if all of these others are doing it, I can do it as well. And that has been a very positive finding. In terms of areas for further inquiry, these rural businesses are still affected by external factors, climate change, economic crisis were some of the factors that were mentioned. We need to understand how to better help them to survive these situations and strengthen them. There is a big question about individual versus group businesses and what is better. There's no answer, but we need to understand how different factors like access to finance, mentoring, and training play in this, and try to understand what's the best in each case and how do we support that option. Again, access to finance, I think the big question is what type of product at what stage of development of the entrepreneur. Different entrepreneurs will require different products. And mentorship scheme, different types of mentor provide different types of support. And so how do we structure also more appropriately? So some of the key takeaways which you will also find in the report, and I'm not going to go through this because we already spoke, but just in terms of recommendations, I want to stick to the last three ones, which are promote local entrepreneurial role models. Training people to be entrepreneurs and have them succeed is important. There are some of them, because it happens that not all businesses work, that they won't succeed at their businesses, but how we frame that is going to make a difference. And how we talk about it is going to make a difference for that community. So instead of talking about business failure, if we talk about what we learn from the experience and how we manage that, it's going to be very important for those local communities and having people learn from those experiences. Design and implement follow-up services that grow as with entrepreneurs and that change also as entrepreneurs change in their journey. And this is something that I always say we need to continue to enhance the evidence. Youth entrepreneurship, we are starting to learn things, but we need to learn more and understand how different factors play so that we can all eventually have great cakes and great recipes to bake.
Terrific. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Claudia. Fascinating presentation. Copies of the report will be available as you leave the room, and for the online audience, I'm sure they can download them from Raleigh's website and ODI. Tim, give us some thoughts. We've heard Stacey set out the big context of why is it important that young people get this entrepreneurial spirit, go out and set up businesses. And we've heard from Claudia a bit about how that's happening in Nicaragua, Tanzania. Give us your kind of big thoughts about this how question. How do you get someone, a young person, inspired to go out and set up their own business?
Well, I think the really compelling why has been done, and I'm really hungry now for a cake or something after that introduction. But I think the relevancy of this for us is really important for a number of different reasons. We have an organisation called the Bright Ideas Trust, which we founded back in 2007, which has been investing in startup business amongst young people since then. And to date, we've invested around £2 million in over 240 different businesses. And this money has been raised from philanthropists, high net worth individuals, corporates and other places. And what we were finding is very similar things to the report, so that's good that we're in the right place, that's right. But what we were finding is that it takes an awful lot of money to do things in this country because obviously there's different pressures and different challenges that our young people face. And then partnering with Paul Payne, who is the Chief Executive of the Key is E, we wanted to find a different program where we could see if we could do a similar type of effect on helping young people, but doing it in territories where the money we could raise and the political power we could engender and the corporate investment could go a bit further. And that's when we started to look at places like Kenya and working with different entrepreneurs there. Essentially for us, we wanted to be able to, in both of those endeavours, empower young people to think slightly differently. Growing up, I was brought up by a very strong Jamaican disciplinarian in East London. Before the Olympics were there, it wasn't very sexy and cool to live in Stratford at all. But my mum was adamant that the way that we were going to climb the social mobility ladder, and it was brilliant the point you raised about the importance of families, is that we were going to be educated. It was go to school, learn your books, and then go off and go and get a job from somewhere else. What we're seeing now is that youth unemployment is so high, the capabilities that individuals have to have now has completely changed. The fact is we're going to be living much longer than everywhere before, so this whole endeavour to get all the investment of your education in the early stage of your life that's going to sort you out for the rest of your life has completely changed now. And what we're seeing in territories where people have to be much more flexible, the mentality of being entrepreneurial is now much more important. So for us, the commonality between the different territories, be that in Africa or in Stratford, was that we wanted to find young people who were inspired by different things. And the assumption that everybody was going to fit through a sausage machine is no longer the status quo. And then being able to find those who are slightly different, who think in a slightly different way, but then have their talents and skill sets focused on a program which is going to create wealth for them and for their communities was something that was really important to us.
Thank you very much. Dennis, map it out for us. You're the man from the grassroots. You've seen this in practice in Nicaragua. Some thoughts about how it works in practice, your experience working with young people.
Hola. First, just before I answer your questions, I want to say, like, a few weeks ago I went to a conference when the main speaker said that the biggest fear in the UK was public speaking, and second was death. Now imagine speaking another language for me, okay? So apologies for any misspelling. Being a young entrepreneur in Nicaragua, I think it's a challenge. There isn't any incentive for young people. There isn't a culture of taking risks, and the risk is high, mainly for people living under the poverty line. And if you go to a rural community where the main economic activity is agriculture, and most of the people, that's the only thing they know how to do. And when you have now Nicaragua is affected by climate change, there is like a massive drought right now. Like actually Nicaragua has the biggest dry spell, like the longest dry spell for the last 10 years. And I was reading the news that 70% of the crops were lost. So this whole situation, plus like the poverty in the area, makes families, young people to start thinking, okay, what can I do now? There isn't water to grow, and there aren't too many opportunities. So the first thing that comes to their mind is to migrate. So there is a lot of problems on migration, that they go to the cities or to other countries. And I think this ICSE program brings opportunities for young people that didn't think of become an entrepreneur before. And entrepreneurship itself, it's something that you can develop as well, depending on the context and the situation. And I feel very happy, excited, and proud to meet lots of entrepreneurs in the areas where we work. Actually, there's one guy I remember, his name is Ariel. This guy was from a community called Aguascalientes, which is one of the communities we work in Somoto. And he has like lots of ideas. I mean, even though he worked in his father's farm, he wanted to create a bakery. So when he joined the program, he said, okay, I don't know how to bake, but I want to create a bakery.
Send Claudia around.
Yeah, I know, and yeah, and talking about the cake, yeah. So he brought his idea, we helped him to develop his business plan, and then he applied for the grant, he got a seed fund, and then he started his bakery. It became very successful, so he started like selling bread in his community and then other communities, and then he involved his family, he employed other members of the community as well, so like the business itself was growing quite fast. And then he said, okay, so I think I'm gonna create another business. So from the profit, he set up a new business of a chicken farm. Mm-hmm. So, I mean...
Chicken cake.
Yeah, well, chicken cake, why not? And then he was willing to help other entrepreneurs as well. So he was from the first generation, and we invited him to become a mentor for the second generation of entrepreneurs. And that was one of the most successful case studies that I can tell you about.
That's a great example. And there are lots of other great examples in this report, but a great example to make this subject tangible, I think. Part of the programs, you get 20 weeks to train up these young people. And I guess a question for the panel as a whole is, what's the skill, the aptitude, the capacity, the key capacity that you want that young person to walk out after 20 weeks training? What's the one thing or two things that they've got to have nailed as the training provider? What's your objective got to be? Tim, perhaps you could give us your thoughts on that.
We take a slightly different view around what does education mean, because sometimes you can get fixated on educating being what comes out of a book or what's written on a board or in a presentation. And actually, your point around contextualisation is really important here, because for us, both in the UK and on the pilot project, the outreach project in Kenya, it's been very much around confidence, because actually, if you get somebody walking out with the belief that they can, that's actually as powerful as learning what a cash flow is or how to make sure that you understand what profit is. I think those fundamentals can be supported with mentors, advisors, and other people, peer mentors who might come along who have done it beforehand. The role modelling, I think, is very powerful as well. But to get people having the belief that they have the right to do this is sometimes a massive leap for people. You mentioned NEETs. We don't like to talk about NEETs because it reminds me of knits and I get an itchy head and everything else. But the whole point is that there is a group of individuals now who are being labelled as disaffected, can't get... And to overcome some of those barriers of the position that they feel they're in sometimes is sometimes the greatest journey travel before they even get the confidence to start believing they can.
Do you think that training providers at present understand that, or is it too much focus on the technical?
It's difficult because I think you have a lot of well-meaning individuals who believe that a program has to be taught, and once you've ticked the criteria from each different sector, you've done your job. And actually, when you walk away and you can go back to your accommodation or you can do something, you sometimes forget that individuals are in a completely different situation from you are, and how do you support that individual with a robust ability to keep persevering when it's not just are they going to worry about are they going to get a customer tomorrow, sometimes it's, are they going to be able to eat? Are they going to be able to live? Those fundamental Maslow needs are sometimes the biggest things to actually address, as opposed to can I justify the trust that somebody's put into me and giving them money. Lots of our businesses, in Bright Ideas Trust, for example, we have this, what we call a paternal relationship once we actually make the investment. We were finding in our first year lots of our businesses were lying to us. Not that they were trying to steal the money, but they weren't telling us the true state of affairs with regards to their business because they were scared that they were letting us down. And actually, as an investor, that was our responsibility to teach them what was actually required in terms of from them as the individuals running the business. We were the ones who were supposed to give them the advice and guidance and the safety to create their business and run 100 miles an hour. But they felt it was their responsibility to return our money back as quickly as possible. But that's not what we wanted as investors. We wanted them to grow successful businesses.
There's one quote in the report where it says, if I don't pay back the loan, will I get sent to jail? And it just jumped out at me how different the perception can be from the young person. Claudia, you've talked to these people. What do you feel is that they're looking for in the training and getting from the training?
I think, well, this mix, right, and this speaks a lot also to the overall sector. There was a study done very recently mapping out the different skills frameworks, and there are 40 different skills frameworks out there that people are trying to use and combine, and so it becomes a mess to understand who needs what and where. And so for me, the key issues are skills that are transferable across sectors that people can use regardless. So yeah, like life skills like confidence, self-esteem are transferable, but also some key business and technical skills might be transferable and relevance to the context. And I think the young people, all of them said, you know, I feel that I can do it, I feel confidence, but not only that, like, oh, I can do it and then try to do it and fail because I don't have the right skills. I've also learned, you know, how to use the Canvas business model. And with the Canvas business model, I can, you know, do the business plan for this one, but if this idea doesn't work, then I can use a Canvas business model for n number of ideas that I have. So there again, the transferable and relevant skills. And I think you need this mix of life, business, and technical skills in the right you know, in the right proportions, and that's what we're trying to figure out. And that's not only within Raleigh, that is a sector-wide problem that we're trying to figure out how much of each and which ones will be the most useful ones.
I love the comment in the video where the girl says in perfect English, oh, and my English is improving. You mentioned confidence as death on the podium, but Ariel sounds like he's flying. What's in Nicaragua, what do you feel the training needs are, and are they being met through programs like this?
I think one of the strongest elements of the program itself, it's the partnerships of the organization, like the involvement of different stakeholders to support the young entrepreneurs. Not just the organization itself, but also the support of the community members, the support of family, the support of community leaders, also even like churches, because some of the communities are very religious and they have a lot of influence in the community as well. Also the involvement of local governments and the project partners that through other projects they complement some of the skills and knowledge that the entrepreneurs gain from the program.
I would say there is a risk sometimes with training programs that we are training potential entrepreneurs to help us fulfill our own criteria. So in terms of managing and measuring where the money goes, etc., that's important. So you've got to make sure you understand cash flow. When actually, for the individual, it might be much more important how they measure an irrigation system is working. So we have to be very careful of that we're not just training for the things that we want to measure to make ourselves feel slightly better, and it's really focused on what the individual needs. So with our focus at the KSE and of Bright Ideas Trust, it's very much around we don't want to be in your life anymore because actually we need to help you to stand on your own 2 feet. The reality is that we want to make ourselves redundant. The reality is that the issues in some of the territories we work are not going to go away anytime soon. But we should be looking to empower the individuals so they don't need the charitable support anymore. Because actually, if we are truly living our vision of making the territories where we are doing some good work better, the reality is it should be a short-term intervention or however long that is short, but do the work and help people to do it on their own 2 feet as opposed to just ticking boxes.
And just want to add one thing. I think one of the excellent elements that the ICSE program brings to the community is that it's not just about creating young business people. It's also about creating leaders in the community, like young people that participate into the decision-making processes in the community, that express what are their concerns, and then they can feel involved as well, and they can feel part of the solution. And I think that was one of the key areas that they felt that it was the first time that they were taken into consideration into different participation processes within the community.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned, I'd like to talk briefly about mentoring, and Tim, you've had some experience. You talk about mentor, you don't want to be in their lives anymore. How do you juggle that? And what's a good mentor? I mean, how much hand-holding do you need to do, and what's the best way of doing that?
A key element of Bright Ideas Trust is our group of mentors. So we are very specific on what we classify a mentor to be, because I think it's a very broad term and can sometimes get confused. So we make the distinction between, and I think you articulated really brilliant before, of just-in-time support and advice and guidance on a much bigger, grander scale. So our mentors have to be successful entrepreneurs, people who have been there, done it, got the t-shirt and the scars to prove it. Because I think if I'm going to learn how to make a glass, I want to speak to a glass maker, not to the baker, because it makes sense. I'm really hungry now. Has anyone got any cakes? Think about these cakes everywhere, right? But I want to speak to somebody who understands what I'm going through and can really relate to me on it. And I think there's some great initiatives which get lots of volunteers into programs of people who have no business experience at all. And I think they should be moved completely away from the people who know what they're doing and can give real world advice, which is really valuable. That's not to say that you must get rid of all your volunteers and you can't find the way to use goodwill in a different way, but I think it's very dangerous to get people who have, for example, we work with some brilliant accountancy firms and professional services organisations to help set up what we do. They are excellent at helping someone to work out what their account should be. They are not so good about taking risk on what decision a business should take in one direction. So our advisors, as we call those, just-in-time experts, have a very specific space to answer a question or a call from an individual as and when they need it. So the volunteers that we saw on there, they might go over and say, listen, I've done this before, or I've got 2 pairs of hands and I can walk and talk, what do you want me to do?
Just clarify for it, thank you very much. If we clarify for it, in ICSE specifically, what is the role of the young volunteer coming from the UK, and is there a danger they might fall into that?
Well, the role of the young volunteer is there to provide training. So they have a curricula that they developed, and they walk the young entrepreneurs through all these stages. And on top of that, the entrepreneurs get access to mentors. And for me, what was very interesting was there are different types of mentors that they can tap into depending on their needs. So you have the technical mentors, and sorry, but we go back to the baker. There was Doña Fanny, who is a baker and is working with a community that decided to do baking business. And she literally had a group of entrepreneurs come into her shop, show them, this is how we operate. Yep. This is, what we do, how we do it. Gave her suppliers information to the young entrepreneurs because they were buying flour literally on the shop while they could buy it bulk for much lower prices. So this access to expertise and technical training was needed. They also got access to business mentors who were looking at, your business plan, financing when you need it, and also community mentors, because you need community buy-in for many of these businesses. You need community support. Yeah. And managing the dynamics and politics of communities is not always easy. And these community mentors were able to support these entrepreneurs. And so different types of mentors to support different needs. And we are now, with Raleigh, talking about peer-to-peer mentorship, because one big thing that we found is young people face different challenges and they really want to talk about it. And they want to talk about how others like them did it to overcome it, and they want to create these support groups. So there are different roles for different people, and the question is, how do you structure that so that you provide the help that is needed at the right time?
In Nicaragua, how does it work? I'm particularly interested in how you identify these mentors, given that they're probably, if they're going to be any good, they're going to be busy, going to be successul. They might even have a vested interest in getting in on the action of a young entrepreneur. So how do you identify? Do you need to pay them? Do you rely on volunteers? How does it work?
No, I mean, we have, as Claudia mentioned, different types of mentors, but we try to identify mentors in the community first, because they are the one who have more access to the entrepreneurs because it's easier to contact them as well. And then we have external mentors, like can be from the closest city, or can be also students from university, and also project partners. They work on different programs as well, not just with ICSC, but they also have other technical programs where they bring technical staff to the communities and train them in different technical skills to these entrepreneurs. And for example, one of the project partners, they also have some technical skills courses where they involve some of the young entrepreneurs into these courses like cooking, sewing, like beekeeping, etc. So that the entrepreneurs they gain knowledge, technical skills, and also they open their mind to another business opportunities, which was very interesting for them because they never thought that they could be able to become a business young person of a certain type of business.
Yeah, great, thank you. We're keen to open the questions to the floor, but if you'll permit me one more question. But before we do that, so store up your questions, and that's on financing. Claudia, you said seed capital is essential, it's what gets these ideas off the ground, and you suggested that the ICSC program has experimented with a few different models, loans, in-kind grants. What are the financial instruments out there? I mean, there's a whole
range,
panoply of them. So what are the 3 or 4 big options that you might consider?
I think that rather than so you have a wide range of options. What we really need to think about is which option we use and when. So basically, as we walk with entrepreneurs through his or her journey, let's try to use different tools and mechanisms to support that journey. So that question, maybe for first-time young entrepreneurs in rural areas, loans might not be the best option, but that doesn't mean that in 6 months or in a year, that won't be an option. So from what we saw, seed capital seemed to work really well, and it were very small amounts that were given in kind, so that they could, rather than having all that money and creating risk, that they could just have access to what they needed. But I'm very sure that, even I visited these communities in July, by now some of them are already ready to go to a local finance institution and request a loan because they already have some type of experience. They might have grown collateral and so on. So the question is rather, how do we use what's out there to structure around the needs of the entrepreneurs, but also how do we work with local financial institutions to make financial services tailored to the needs of young people?
2 quick questions. Tim said it can be very expensive actually here in the UK. What kind of amounts are we talking about to get a young entrepreneur off the ground? And the second question is, it's fine saying, see what's out there, but what is out there? Traditional finance providers, are they interested? Are they willing to?
Well, so I'm going to start with your second question. There has been a lot of effort from the youth sector to interest financial providers, and we are starting to see large players coming into the field under the understanding that this is the next generation. We want to start with our clients very early on. So Barclays in Africa is playing a huge role in providing financial services in very different ways to entrepreneurs and young people in general. And in terms of what is out there, I mean, seed capital, we're talking about $100, which is like £70. That's something that rural entrepreneurs can already work with. I mean, some of them might need larger sums, depending again on the business, right? Depending on what the entrepreneur brings to the table. Some of them had to start their beekeeping businesses. That was a slightly larger grant, 200. So we're, this is like what we're talking is you can create a lot of value out of very small sums. And so you need to do that. You also have the option of loans, but in many of these countries, we need to think about interest rates, repayment rates and times. And so we need to keep talking with financial institutions to tailor these products. And it's not an easy task. But if we start selling this proposal in terms of the generation of next clients and the benefits that you will gain, they will see the business and they will become interested.
Tim, you're nodding a lot. I love your point about working with entrepreneurs in Stratford and Africa.
Yeah.
There's clearly different financing needs. How does it differ in when you're working in Africa from Stratford?
Hugely. So with the KZ, with our outreach program, we'll have competitions where we'll be investing, donating, gifting almost £100 equivalent for people to see what they can do. Because our mentality there would be, if you can make £1 grow, you can make £100 grow, they can make £1,000 grow. And it's the attitude of the individual and the entrepreneurial mindset, because that's what an entrepreneur is. It's not a job, it's the way you think about things, is how we'll test things. Where in the UK, we have slightly more sophisticated products that we can utilise, where we've got a mixture of debt and equity that we'll put in. We'll get the debt back from the individuals based on a window of opportunity they have to actually get their business off the ground, which is why I have some issues with some of the loan financing that's there, which drives people just to service a loan from day one, which is not really what you want to do from an investment perspective. So I think the 4 different things for me are loan, equity, grant and gift. And we would tend, if we're true to ourselves, want to get into the equity end of the market, because if we're truly going to invest, that's what we should be doing, because we believe in the growth of the individual, we believe in the scalability of the business, whereas lots of loan financing seems to be, well, let's test it from a safe distance and see what we get back, not always taking into consideration what's the profitability likelihood of that business and what you're actually forcing that business to do if you slap them with a right. Just quickly, because I know you're going to open up to the floor, I was at a dinner just yesterday. I sat next to a very interesting young man. He wasn't that young, but I'm flattering. Who talked about having a conversation with a very wealthy individual who phoned him up after the dinner and offered him a couple of £1 million for his business at 2% interest rate. And we're talking about individuals who are struggling to get £1,000 and the ridiculous interest rates that are out there. So for me, sometimes it's easier to ask for lots of money for big scalable things rather than it is to ask for a little bit of money for little things that aren't really going to make fundamental difference to people's communities and environments. And if we are, as we are with the KZ, want to change Africa as a continent, there is such a huge potential which big countries like China and others are taking advantage of, which we could, if we changed our mentality ever so slightly and said, let's look at the opportunity that's in this country. Let's reverse engineer some of these business models and say, this is what this country, this community, this environment actually needs, and then find the entrepreneurs to actually run those vehicles. We could find the money, we could get the people, and we could completely change the way that Africa not only is run, but actually is developed and perceived. And that's, for me, the big opportunity we have with programs like ODI and running.
Wow. Try following that up then. We've got a question from the floor. There's a hand right at the back there. Early. Yeah.